UFC 310 is filled with a big fight after big fight after big fight. Now, I know what you're thinking. At the top is just a flyweight title, right? And if you had to rank the titles, that one's probably at the bottom, even below the women's divisions, believe it or not, in terms of viewership. And in the flyweight title, you got Alexander Pantoja versus a newcomer, at least in the UFC, not in the world of MMA, and Kai Asakura. So we're going to get into that fight for sure. But what I'm telling you is, even though that's the main event, there's about 7 or 8 fights, maybe 9 or 10 really, below that fight that are just awesome. And as we were doing the predictions over the last few weeks, and you start going down fight by fight, you start to realize like, wow, this card is legit. So we're going to go fight by fight, beginning with fight number 8, and give you all the predictions, detailed predictions for those fights, and then finish up with a prediction for every fight in the entire card. This is all coming next.
Broadcasting live from an undisclosed location. This is the TCMMA Podcast with your host, Chris Cross.
Whoa!
Dana White privilege.
Let's go, baby! Let's go! Let's go! Let's go! Let's go, baby!
Dana White privilege. Privilege.
What's happening? What's happening? What's happening? This your boy, Chris Cross, checking in for an exciting week. I mean, UFC 310 is going to be amazing. Last pay-per-view card of the year. No reason not to get excited. Again, I know you see at the top of this card a flyweight title. And you're saying, why should I get excited about that? Well, you got a new UFC fighter coming in on debut, fighting for the title, which is crazy when you think about it, right? And Kai Asakura. I mean, the guy's coming in his UFC debut and fighting for the title. So the UFC is trying to do something here, right? They're trying to do something and get people excited. But it's not that fight that you should be excited about. It's the other 13 fights on the card that really make this thing. I mean, it's just fight after fight after fight. And as we get toward the end of the show, we'll get into all the early prelims and fill everything out. But we're going to start quick here in fight 8 because we're going through 8 predictions today. And we got to get started with it in this one. And this is fight 8. I always tell you, fight 7 in the pay-per-view defines the card, right? You got that big fight at fight 7. Then you got the prelim main event. And then, of course, you're into the main card. So if those 2 fights are legit, the whole card is legit. This time we're going past fight 7 and we're beginning in fight 8. Doesn't get any better than this. Undefeated Movsarevloev versus former bantamweight champ Aljamain Sterling. This is a featherweight fight, so let's get into it right now. In the featherweight division at UFC 310, oh my goodness, you got Movsarevloev, perfect 18-0, taking on former bantamweight champ who moved up to featherweight, Aljamain Sterling, who's 24-4 and has looked good in this division. But Movsar is more than a 2.5 to 1 favorite. Let's see if it holds up. Both guys 5'7". Movsar 30, right in the middle of the prime. Sterling 35. He's still good at that age. Evloev 2-inch reach advantage. Both guys stand right-handed. Sterling 4.6 significant strikes per minute to 4.4 for Evloev, so they're almost equal. Both guys can land takedowns. Evloev more than 1.5 per round. Sterling's going to get like 1 every round on average. So that's going to be interesting to watch as a takedown game. So forget takedown defense in this one. Both guys got the ability to defend takedowns and take it to the ground. Now, Evloev is undefeated, but how many wins has he got in the UFC? He's 8-0 in the UFC. And all 8 are by decision. So he's just dominating his opponents with takedowns. In the last 3 fights, he had 9 against Danny Ige, 4 against Diego Lopez, and 5 against Arnold Allen. So that's going to be the game for him. He just shuts down on his opponent on the ground. Now, Sterling beat Calvin Kattar by decision. He should. 8 takedowns in that one. Lost to Sean O'Malley by KO. And these are all bantamweights, but beat Henry Cejudo, TJ Dillashaw, Petr Yan again. So, but he did look good in his first featherweight fight against Calvin Kattar. This is a whole different animal. Movsar Evloev can take his opponents down, but listen, Aljamain has some skills on the ground. Okay, that doesn't mean it's going to slow down Evloev, but even when it goes to the ground, he's got some opportunities there. He can go to the ground. Movsar is probably a better fighter, but I like the heart of Aljamain Sterling, and he knows that he's got to win these fights to remain relevant. And his back is against the wall every time he fights. This is a big opportunity for him, and I think he gets the job done because Evloev is not going to be the guy that's going to come in and KO you. And if he does, I'll eat my words. But in 8 UFC fights, he's got 8 decisions. So Sterling's going to get an opportunity here. He might get shut down in one round, but he wins the other 2, in my opinion, to win 29-28 by a close decision, proves his worth in his division, and he's headed towards the top. Look for him to win by decision, in my opinion, with the 25-4 featherweight division, UFC 310. And it just is an exciting fight because you got Aljamain Sterling continuing to move up the ladder in a new division, taking on an undefeated guy. Not an easy prediction. And yeah, we're taking a chance. I mean, if there was zero bias, because I like Aljamain Sterling, that's what I'm trying to tell you. But if there's zero bias, do we go with Movsar? Maybe. But Aljamain is still on the do list, which we'll pull up a little later in the show. I mean, he's still on the do list. I believe in the guy. I think him moving up was the perfect thing to do. And I think he's going to get the job done here. I'm not 100% confident, but I believe he's going to get the job done in this one. Now, as we work our way into fight 7, which I always tell you defines the card, got a big one because it already started in fight 8. But you got Vicente Luque, not against Nick Diaz, but even better, against Themba Gorimbo. Let's jump into that one right now. In the welterweight division at UFC 310, you got Vicente Luque taking on Themba Gorimbo. And I want to say we saw him not too long ago. So we'll break that down in a moment. Now, Vicente is 22-10, Themba 14-4. Themba's 2 inches taller at 6'1". He's 33. Vicente Luque, 32. Themba's got a 1-inch reach advantage. Both guys stand right-handed. Now, Vicente's active on the feet, over 5 significant strikes per minute. Themba right at 3. But Themba likes to take the fight to the ground, landing more than a takedown and a half per round. Vicente, remember, this guy is Brazilian. You know what that means. He's going to be okay on the ground, you would think. But he lands 1 every 3 rounds. And I stress the word Brazilian because they always fight better than you think they're going to. Now, Vicente Luque is a struggle lately, losing to Joaquin Buckley by second-round KO. He beat RDA by decision. That was a big win. 8 takedowns in that one. Lost to Jeff Neal, lost to Bilal Muhammad. But all 3 of those losses are against worthy opponents. Themba has been trending really well in the right direction as of late. Since he lost to AJ Fletcher, almost 2 years ago now, by submission, he came back and beat Takashi Sato. He beat Pete Rodriguez, Ramiz Brahimov, good fighter, Nico Price. So he's beating the guys he's supposed to beat, but there's no doubt this is a step up. And we did see Themba not too long ago in a unanimous decision win against Nico Price. That was back on October 12th. So you're looking at just shy of 2 months later, he dominated that fight with 7 takedowns, 68-16 in significant strikes. And can he turn it around that quick? That's always tough for a fighter, but 2 months is not bad. And for him, he gets another fight this year, so it's a positive. Even if he doesn't win, he gets paid he gets paid for showing. But if he can get the win, he doubles up. So big opportunity for Themba. He is the favorite. I do like him to win this fight. I was kind of curious about the odds. That only, shores it up and makes it easier to go with him for sure. But I just don't like the less than 2 month turnaround against a very, a very good fighter, and Vicente Luque. So keep an eye on that. Themba wins, likely with the takedown game. I think Vicente is going to present a problem on the ground, but Themba will still land 4, 5, 6 takedowns in this fight. Vicente will certainly escape some of those, but Themba's going to win this fight because of that and by decision here, in my opinion. Welterweight division, UFC 310. Yeah, so I mean, it's definitely a levels fight for Themba, right? I mean, you lose to AJ Fletcher, and you're thinking, okay, how's he going to win this fight against Vicente? But then you see Vicente is struggling lately, right? It's like he's not the same fighter that he used to be, but he's still really good. So it's still a fight that Themba has to work through and get past. And I think he does it, but he might lose round one. It might be very close early until the youth takes over. That's just my opinion, but Themba will still get the job done. Please believe it. Now, as we work our way into the main event in the prelims, I mean, it's just a big time fight. Dominic Reyes, who was once near the top, fought John Jones, now takes on what I'll call a surging Anthony Smith, who won his last fight over Vitor Petrino, which people thought wouldn't happen. So now all of a sudden he's back in the mix and gets a big opportunity here to climb the ladder. So let's get into this one right now. In the light heavyweight division at UFC 310, you got Dominic Reyes taking on Anthony Smith. And for some reason, I'm intrigued by this matchup. Dominic Reyes struggling a little bit, but he's still 13-4. Anthony Smith has been around forever, won a lot, lost a lot. He's 38 and 20. Both guys stand at 6'4". Anthony Smith's getting up there a little bit. He's 36. Reyes 34 though. Reyes 1-inch reach advantage. He fights southpaw. Anthony Smith fights right-handed. In terms of significant strikes per minute, Reyes leads 4.9 to 3.2, so he's got an advantage on the feet. Both guys don't really like to go for takedowns, so we're going to see a stand-up striking affair. Reyes 80% takedown defense. That even helps that. In terms of keeping it standing, he beat Dustin Jacoby by KO in his last fight in 2 minutes. He needed that. Before that, he lost to Ryan Superman Spann, Yuri Prochazka, Jan Blachowicz, and John Jones. So he's got a wealth of experience like Anthony Smith. Anthony Smith, though, 50% takedown defense. So that could be a problem in this fight, maybe. Coming off the loss to Roman Dolce by decision. Dolce came up to light heavyweight, beat him. Before that, he beat Vitor Petrino, which was a big win by submission. Lost to Khalil Roundtree, who ended up fighting for the title, got KO'd by him, and beat Ryan Spann by split decision. That's going to be the tricky part, right? Beat him by 32 significant strikes, had a takedown. So that's what makes this fight interesting, is Dominic Reyes lost to Ryan Spann by first-round KO, where Anthony Smith submitted him. Now, but this fight's going to be a different situation because it's probably going to be a stand-up striking fight. They're going to be on the feet. Dominic Reyes has an advantage, but you know what? I like Anthony Smith. And sometimes in these fights, he'll take a punch and then, he'll quiver and that'll be it. But I think Anthony Smith is going to rise to the challenge. You're fighting on a pay-per-view card, right? It's in the prelims, but it's the last fight in the prelims. So he's going to want to make a statement here on live cable TV, right, on ESPN. So look for Anthony Smith to get the job done here. I think it's going to go to a decision, but I think Anthony Smith will win 2 rounds out of 3. It'll come down to a third decisive round. I think Dominic Reyes gets off early. Anthony Smith fights back in round 2, and then it's all out in round 3. Anthony Smith squeaks by a win here, even though he's nearly a 3-1 underdog. I like Anthony Smith to come through, get the victory on the feet. But really, it comes down to round by round. He wins rounds 2 and 3 to win by decision, in my opinion, and be the 39-20 light heavyweight division, UFC 310. And I thought Anthony Smith was near retirement 3 years ago. Start seeing him in the broadcast booth, all those things, but it's hard to even consider retirement when you just keep winning. And that's what Anthony Smith is doing. He just keeps winning. Now, as we jump into the pay-per-view card, the main card, first one up, you got Nate Landwehr versus Doo-Ho Choi. This should be a highly intriguing fight where Landwehr is like a slight favorite here in the featherweight division in this fight, but it's very, very close. So what I'm telling you is we can go either way with this prediction. Let's get into it right now. In the featherweight division at UFC 310, this fight is on pay-per-view. It is in the main card. You got Nate Landwehr coming in at 18-5, taking on Doo-Ho Choi from Korea, who comes in at 15-4. Choi 1 inch taller at 5'10". He's just 33. Landwehr 36. Landwehr 2-inch reach advantage. Both guys stand right-handed. Now on the feet, they're both pretty active, but Landwehr has an advantage. 6.3 significant strikes per minute to 4.4 for Choi. So you're looking at like 30 potentially, 25 to 30 throughout the fight. That's a problem. And when you look at takedowns, Landwehr is slightly ahead with 1 takedown every 3 rounds. So more importantly, it's not like Choi is going to be a big threat in a takedown game. So that's good for Nate Landwehr because he don't mind keeping the fight standing. That's why he KO'd Jamal Emmers in the previous fight, first round. Did lose to Dan Ige, but beat Austin Lingo by submission and beat David Onama. That's impressive. By decision. Choi, 47% takedown defense. That could be a problem. Beat Bill Algeo by KO. Unless you want to do it that way, then it's not a problem. Lost to Kyle Nelson by decision. Got KO'd by Charles Jourdain, Jeremy Stevens. So all these are a problem. I don't know if Nate Landwehr is as good as those fighters, but the bottom line is when you look at the numbers and the resume, I got no choice but to go with Nate Landwehr to win this thing. Who knows how? Probably be a finish, but Choi's good enough to get to a decision. We'll see. But I like Landwehr to win this thing on the ground or on the feet. It's really his choice to move to 19-5 here, featherweight division, UFC 310. Yeah, close fight, and all these fights are important now down the stretch as we round out the year with these 2 final cards. And we're taking chances on some of these fights like Anthony Smith and others, but we need Nate Landwehr to come through here because we're usually really confident down the stretch, especially in a pay-per-view card. Now, that hasn't always worked out, but even if we're behind in the picks early, we always come back in the main card. So this will kick that off, and we need Nate Landwehr to come through, and I think he does. Now in fight 4, another interesting fight because you got a Gracie entering the octagon. Kron Gracie, and he's taking on Bryce Mitchell, who I believe, without looking, was KO'd in his last fight. It was a pretty rough one, and he's looking to bounce back here against a Gracie, who we know is always going to be a problem if he can take you down, right? It just goes with the name. So let's get into this one right now. In the featherweight division at UFC 310, you got Bryce Mitchell taking on Kron Gracie. Mitchell 16-3, Gracie 5-2. This is USA versus Brazil. Mitchell's 1 inch taller, 5'10". He's 30, Gracie 36. Both guys 70-inch reach. Both guys fight left-handed. Gracie like 3.7 significant strikes per minute to 2.3 for Mitchell. Mitchell's got to get better in that area, but he's busy going for takedowns. When he can't get him, he's in trouble. But when he can get him, he looks great. He lands over 1 takedown per round on average, where Kron Gracie wants to keep the fight standing. Now, Mitchell got dominated by Josh Emmett in the last fight. Lost by first round KO. He did beat Dan 50K Ige, though, by decision. That's an impressive win, and he did it with the 5 takedowns. Lost to Ilya Topuria by submission. So you got to give it to the guy. He's not running away from anybody. He's fighting some of the best. I mean, he beat Edson Barbosa, too, a guy that I really think was impressive, especially around that time when he beat him in March of 2022. Beat Andre Fili, Charles Rosa. The guy's got all types of victories. Kron Gracie's still early in the game in terms of the UFC, but he lost to Charles Jourdain by decision, lost to Cub Swanson by decision, so none of these are a good look, but, the Cub Swanson fight, the previous fight before that was in 2019, when he fought Charles Jourdain in 2023, May, so a year and a half ago. He got dominated 80-32 on the feet, so I got no choice but to go with Bryce Mitchell. It doesn't mean Kron Gracie hasn't got better, but Bryce Mitchell's just proven that he's on a different level. He needs a bounce-back fight. That's what this is. Look for him to win and win on a big stage in the pay-per-view card. To the 17-3, in my opinion, featherweight division, UFC 310. Yeah, and if this isn't a bounce-back fight, I don't know what is. I mean, Bryce Mitchell losing the last fight needs to come out and prove his worth. I mean, he's in a main card during pay-per-view. I mean, people are paying big bucks to watch this thing, and he's got to come through. That's what people want to see. Kron Gracie, to me, isn't an elite fighter. He's very good, but not recognizable yet in the UFC other than the last name. And that's just the way I feel. So Bryce Mitchell's got to come in and put on a show, and he will, to get the win. Now, as we work our way up into the big three, we are live for the final 3 fights of any pay-per-view card, and we're expecting 3 big ones here. In fight 3, heavyweight division, you got Cyril Gane versus Alexander Volkov. I believe this is a rematch, but we'll get into it more so in the prediction. So let's just tune it up. Let's get rocking. Here we go. In the heavyweight division at UFC 310, you got 2 very good fighters, right? In Cyril Gane, 12-2, Volkov 35-10. Both guys pretty much now veterans of the game. Volkov's been around forever, right? Gane just 14 fights in. He's got 2 losses against 2 of the best, Ngannou and Jones. So this is France versus Russia. Let's get into it. Volkov is a very tall heavyweight, one of the tallest fighters in the UFC at 6'7". Cyril Gane's no slouch, though. He's 6'4". Volkov 36, Gane 34. So it's, the time is now for both these guys. Cyril Gane has a 1-inch reach advantage, believe it or not. Both guys stand right-handed. In terms of the activity or significant strikes, they're almost even. Both over 5 significant strikes per minute, so keep an eye on that. And neither fighter really likes to take the fight to the ground. They want to keep the fight standing. Now, Cyril Gane is coming off a win over Sergey Spivak by 2nd round KO. He did lose to John Jones, you remember. 1st round submission in about 2 minutes, and before that he beat Tai Tuivasa. So in the last 4 fights, he has 2 really good opponents, right? In John Jones and Francis Ngannou, and 2 lower level opponents. So we still are trying to figure out where this guy's at. And, these guys fought back in 2021, so this will be the rematch. And we'll have to see what happens. Now, Volkov, coming off the win over Sergey Pavlovich by decision. He subbed Tai Tuivasa. He beat Alexander Romanov by KO. He's beaten Rosenstrike by KO. So he's got a little more proof in terms of the level of competition, because now you're getting up there against Rosenstrike and Tybura and Romanov, Pavlovich, and the jury is still out on Cyril Gane. And that's why this rematch makes sense. In the first fight, it was 135-115 Cyril Gane. So you'd expect no takedowns either, right? So you'd expect the pace to continue in this fight. You want to see Volkov move around a little bit better, dodge some punches. They both want to keep the fight standing, but you're going to have to slow Cyril Gane down, and I just don't see that happening for Volkov. I think he's better, but I think Volkov will step up here. He's a much bigger favorite than he should be, though. If you go back and look at that last fight, it was pretty darn close, and the numbers prove it. But I still like Cyril Gane to edge out Volkov and then face a Rosenstrike or someone of that caliber where, he can continue beating better and better fighters and not really reach for the top right now. Just keep building more and more experience. You're still just 34. You get to 36, 37, then you really are running out of time. So right now you just got to beat high caliber fighters like Volkov and continue taking fights like that. But yeah, Cyril Gane's going to win this thing, in my opinion, on the feet, very similar to the first fight. You're looking at high activity from both guys, but Cyril Gane outpaces Volkov to move to 13-2 heavyweight division, UFC 310. Yeah, and this is just nothing more than a 2-year process of restructuring for Cyril Gane. Face good fighters, guys you are likely to beat, but also getting into training regimen and getting better and more well-rounded. So you can get in there against a guy like John Jones and potentially win. So you got to be training at a high level. And I think Cyril Gane's doing that, and I think you're going to see the difference here in this fight. Volkov will put up a good fight, but he's going down, in my opinion. Now, in the co-main event, arguably the main event, I mean, this is serious. 2 undefeated fighters. We couldn't wait to get here. Shavkat Rakhmonov, 18-0. Ian Machado Garry, 15-0. And it doesn't get much better than this. And credit Shavkat for taking this fight. Ian Garry was supposed to fight the following week at UFC Tampa. Well, he got bumped to this one. And Shavkat could have just easily said, no, I'll wait and fight Bilal for the title. But instead, he's taking a big risk against a guy that's really good in Ian Machado Garry. And we really don't know how this fight's going to go down. So let's get into some old reactions, right, involving both these guys. But let's begin with Ian Garry versus D-Rod. When Ian Garry came up with the big finish. Check this out. Nice jab there by Ian Garry. 90 seconds in. And so far, he's not having the big problems with the left-hander as I thought. It's tough when you're a righty, right? I mean, lefties are used to facing righties because there's more righties. But when you're a righty and you face a left-hander now, your lead leg are banging each other almost. You know, your power punch is farther away. But Garry doing a good job getting off on the jabs here. And he's taking on a real striker. And you see a headbutt right there, or a clash as they both come in. Oh, and a nice leg kick by Garry. And he was just called out earlier from one of the winning fighters because, you know, that guy got the finish and Ian Garry took the guy to a decision. So basic premise is Ian Garry needs a finish here if he really wants to up his ante. D-Rod with some nice uppercuts. They don't land, but letting them know. Remember, D-Rod is ranked number 15, so with a win here, Ian Garry could get into the top 15 and become ranked in the welterweight division. Oh, and a nice leg kick. D-Rod goes down. Ian Garry on top. Look at this. D-Rod's covering up. Yeah, that head kick, I think, did it. Boy, and he's pounding away. Wow, and Ian Garry unloads, and it's over. And the crowd goes crazy. And did they say 12-0? I thought he had a loss. Wow. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, Ian Garry 12-0. Unbelievable, man. And D-Rod was 17-3. This guy was no joke. And he gets the KO at 232. So big ups to Ian Garry. Big win here. And what is this, 4 or 5 finishes in a row? Unbelievable. Back into the win column for us, though. We'll take it. And he really unloaded at the end to get the stoppage. And actually, it'll be 2:02 into the first round. So it took him just over 2 minutes to get the KO. He'll be ranked welterweight division, UFC, fight night. Yeah, so he's had a couple decisions since then, but it shows you that, you know, he can go on a streak where he's just finishing people. Of course, it's going to get harder when you move up levels, but Ian Machado Garry is the truth at 15-0. Now, Shavkat is no stranger to finishes either, right? Like his last fight against Stephen Thompson, where he got the big submission. Check this out. Here we go. Come on, Shavkat. You got to do something, man. Oh, he gets to the back. 25 seconds left. Come on, Shavkat. Oh. Oh, come on. Finish it. Finish it. 10 seconds left. Come on, finish it. He's close. He's tapping. That's it. Let's go. 18-0, baby. Shavkat gets the submission. Wow. 4 seconds left in the round. And that's a big deal. Okay. Now we're talking. Okay. Now we're talking. 18-0. Big finish. Over Stephen Thompson. So now you got to put him in the discussion. That's the bottom line. Shavkat gets the big win here. Thompson's going to fall to 17-7. Unbelievable. Welterweight division. UFC 296. Yeah, so both guys are ridiculous, capable of getting finishes at any given time. And again, 18-0 versus 15-0. You see here on the dude list, Shavkat's number 5, Ian Machado Garry number 10. They're both in the top 10. And the dude list is like our favorite fighters. It's not a pound for pound list. These are our favorite fighters. Whoever's at the, you know, Shavkat's above Ian Machado Garry, so that should mean I'm predicting him to win. But hold on. We're going to have to wait and see if that's the way it turns out. But make no mistake, these are two guys that I highly regarded in the world of MMA, and where they're both undefeated, We really don't know what's going to happen. I mean, we just don't. So, without further ado, let's jump into the prediction right now.
In the welterweight division, your co-main event at UFC 310. This might be one of the biggest fights of the year. You got Shavkat Rakhmonov, 18-0, taking on Machado Garry. He's 15-0, and credit both of these guys for taking this fight. This is incredible. Shavkat was expected to fight Bilal Muhammad for the title. He could just sit back and wait for that title fight, but he says no. Bring on Ian Garry. Rakhmonov fighting out of Kazakhstan. Ian Garry fighting out of Ireland. Ian Garry's 2 inches taller at 6'3". He's 27. Rakhmonov 30. Rakhmonov 2-inch reach advantage. Both guys stand right-handed. Ian Garry is more active on the feet. 5.5 significant strikes per minute to 4.1 for Rakhmonov. But the takedown game, that slides to Rakhmonov. He lands like one every other round. He may have to improve on that number in this fight. Ian Garry gets like one every 4, so he's more of a pure striker. Rakhmonov, 100% takedown defense. In his win against Stephen Thompson by submission, he had 1 takedown and 2 submission attempts. Also led on the feet, dominated Jeff Neal on the feet, ended up getting the submission in that fight. Beat Neil Magny by submission. So he's won 3 straight fights by submission and only had 3 takedowns in those 3 fights. He submitted Jeff Neal without either fighter landing a takedown. So that's crazy. The guy's undefeated in the UFC, obviously. He's looking really good, and he has an uncanny ability to get finishes. He has yet to go to a decision in the UFC. Now, Ian Garry, a.k.a. The Future, coming off the win over MVP Michael Venom Page by decision. That was a big one. Close fight, though. He did it with 2 takedowns and kind of ran the clock out. Beat Jeff Neal by split decision. So that's something to keep an eye on here. He did outstrike Jeff Neal, but Shavkat dominated him. Beat Neil Magny by decision. Beat D-Rod by KO. Beat Song Keenan by KO. So he's undefeated in the UFC too. I mean, it's incredible what both of these guys have done. But the bottom line is Gary's going to have to get off on the feet and really, really protect the takedowns. Right? 70% takedown defense is good, a little better than average, but not when you got a guy like Shavkat who's really going to be focused on either trying to get you to the ground or trying to submit you. Can Ian Garry really lengthen this fight? Right? Keep the fight on the feet, keep each other separated, and do it that way, because he's going to have to. He's going to have to. If he finds himself on the ground, it's going to be a short fight. So he's got to keep himself on the feet, stay away from submission attempts. Easier said than done. But as much as I don't want to go against either fighter, and in any other fight I would not. I mean, this is a title fight to me. But Bilal holds the belt right now. I still got to lean towards Shavkat Rakhmonov. I mean, the guy finishes everybody. And maybe that's just not Ian Garry's makeup. You know, he wins by decision. That's great too. But the bottom line is I can't go against Shavkat when I mean, they're both undefeated, but he's undefeated and he's won every fight in the UFC by finish. I mean, it's just ridiculous. So I like Shavkat to win this fight. Don't know if he'll finish Ian Garry. That will be a big deal. But he's still more than a 3-1 favorite. I don't think Ian Garry should be that big of an underdog. But the bottom line is I like Shavkat Rakhmonov to get the job done here. The bigger question to me is, will he get to finish? We'll have to wait and see. But he'll move to 19-0 and be that much closer to the welterweight title, where he'll take on Bilal Muhammad sometime in 2025. This is, of course, my opinion. We'll see. Welterweight division, co-main event, UFC 310.
And we've seen a lot of big fights this year, but arguably this is the biggest fight of the year, because in no other fight are we getting like 2 undefeated guys. Who knows how it turns out? It might not be the best fight of the year, but going into it, it's arguably the biggest fight of the year. And we'll take Shavkat Rakhmonov because we have to pick one. But both guys are capable of winning, and we really don't know what's going to happen until they lock horns. When you look at what the people are saying, and of course this is just put up, so we're only 24 votes in, but you can see the momentum already for Shavkat. 71% of the vote early on, and it might close to 60-40, 60 some 30, like let's say 65-35, something like that. But you can tell Shavkat is leading in that area in terms of the vote of the people. So if that changes significantly, we'll update that. But that's where it's at early on. Now, as we work our way into the main event, it's a big one. Flyweight division title on the line. Not always a fan favorite, to say the least. But it is interesting where you got a guy in Asakura coming in a UFC debut situation and fighting for the belt. This just doesn't ever happen. I mean, it just doesn't happen. It's crazy when you think about it. And Asakura, thinks UFC benefits in a recent article saying if he defeats Alexandre Pantoja, the UFC benefits. I'm here to make it exciting. He tells MMA Junkie, let's be honest, it's good business for the UFC if I win. I'm here to make it exciting for people to have interest in the flyweight division and have a whole bunch of new matchups ready to have on future shows. So is it better? Yes, because we need some, Pantoja just dominates this division. We need someone to come in and potentially win. But then it's like, okay, guys from outside the UFC are potentially better than guys inside the UFC. So you sort of want the UFC guy to win too to protect the home turf and not open up that can of worms. But at the same time, it is the fight to make at this point in time. Researching Asakura, he's really good. Pantoja's a great, Alexandre did great. But at the same time, Asakura is going to come in and present a problem because he's going to be harder to break down than other UFC fighters against UFC fighters. So highly interesting here, and hopefully Pantoja doesn't overlook this one. But let's jump into this fight. Prediction right now.
In the flyweight division for the flyweight division championship in your main event at UFC 310. You got Alexandre Pantoja, current champion. This is a bad dude, right? Taking on newcomer, a guy that brings a lot of hype with him, and in his UFC debut gets a title shot, which is very rare, in Kai Asakura. He's 21-4. Pantoja sitting at 28-5. So highly interesting matchup. Now Asakura is going to be 3 inches taller at 5'8". He's 31. Pantoja 34. Asakura's got a 1-inch reach advantage. Both guys stand right-handed. Now we know a little bit more about Pantoja, right? I mean, he lands like 4.4 significant strikes per minute. He lands like a takedown on average per round. He's got an average takedown defense at like 68%. And he's been on a tear lately, 6 straight wins, most recently against Steve Erceg in defense of the title. Won that by decision. Pretty close fight, though. Beat Brandon Royval by decision. Royval actually outstruck him, but 8 takedowns to none stifled that opportunity. So Pantoja is legit in that he can find ways to win, different in every fight. So he's very versatile. Now Asakura has 21 wins, 13 KOs, 3 submissions. So that's a big deal. He's fighting at a Risen for as long as we can see. He did lose a couple fights ago to Ogik Kubu. Never heard of him. Won the last 2 by KO over Montoya and Archuleta. And this is just odd to me, right? I mean, you're getting a guy making his UFC debut fighting for the title. What does that say about the rest of the division? Could Asakura come in here and win? Well, sure he can, because guys don't know as much about him as they do other UFC fighters. They're still going to be able to watch tape and all these type of things. But he's fighting non-UFC fighters at Risen. And he still has 4 losses. Now, he hasn't lost since the New Year's Eve 2021. But he's only fought twice since then. Missing out in 2022. Fighting 2 in 2023. We haven't seen him in 2024. This is just a big problem for me, that this guy gets to come in and just get a title fight. But the division is weak and there's nothing else to put up there. And thank goodness they had this fight with Bilal Muhammad having to pull out of the previous main event. So who's going to win this fight? I got to go with Pantoja, right? I just don't see a guy coming in in their UFC debut and taking the belt. I mean, the fact that Dana White would even allow that to be a possibility is kind of crazy to me. And again, you never know. But this one is Brazil versus Japan. You know how I feel about the Brazilian fighters, how good they are anyway. Brazil's got the belt. I don't see him losing the belt against a newcomer. I know there's going to be a lot of people that weigh in and say, well, Asakura did this and Asakura did that, and he's really good. And he's not coming in and winning the belt in his UFC debut. That's the bottom line, and that's my opinion. Alexandre Pantoja dominates his fight to move to 29-5. Real simple. He'll do it on the ground, on the feet. He can do it in a multitude of ways. But Pantoja wins this fight, in my opinion. For the flyweight title, he retains it at UFC 310.
Yeah, and Pantoja better protect the home turf. That's the bottom line. We can't have a guy coming from outside the UFC and winning the title. Michael Chandler almost did it. I mean, he had to get through, I think, Dan Hooker first. Finished him. Almost finished Oliveira for the belt. And then Oliveira ended up winning that fight. So it really, in recent memory, can't go back, more than 6 or 7 years. I can't remember a time when a guy came in on a debut and won a UFC belt. Maybe in the early days when it wasn't, fully structured yet. But as we go further, that's going to be even tougher because guys want to get into the UFC as soon as possible, start making a name for themselves. So it makes it harder and harder for a guy to go his whole career and then come into the UFC on a title fight. I mean, it's just crazy. But that's why we have it. Alexandre Pantoja, one of the two, will hold serve in this one. Now, in some other fights, you see they're down at 14. We got Kennedy Nzechukwu winning that fight. We got Chase Hooper over Clay Guida, although Clay Guida is going to be a tough fight. In the lightweight division, always very tough to predict. Anything can happen there, but we like Chase Hooper because he just continues to grow. But Clay Guida's a tough guy to figure out. He moves around a lot, keeps his head off that center line, all that stuff. We got Michael Chiesa winning, Joshua Van. And then it's crazy. We finally get Chris Weidman in his final fight against Eric Anders. Missed the opportunity to fight in New York City, but at least he gets to go out. Even if it is in Vegas, he gets to go out at a pay-per-view event. Not in the pay-per-view, but at a pay-per-view event. And if he wins, it's kind of hard to see him go. He's battled his way back from the injury, and he's winning. So, will he still retire if he wins his fight? I don't know. I don't know. He says he is, but we'll see. And then we got Randy Brown winning as well. So those are the first 6 fights on the card that we didn't cover, and all the rest of them you can see, like Aljamain Sterling, Garimbo, Smith, Landwehr, Mitchell, Gane, Rakhmonov, and Pantoja. Those are our 14 fighters that we believe will get the job done. But with these things, you never know. It's been, 5 or 6 years? We've never had a perfect night, and we've been like 11-1. Something always happens. It's very hard to go perfect, so we're obviously not 100%. We're having a good year, but 22-18 in the main event, not good. We're plus 100 overall in prediction, so that's good. All we got to do is go 500 down the stretch here, which is not even going to be easy, but it should happen, right? It should happen. But that's UFC 310. It's going to be live, last one of the year. For now, it's your boy Chris Cross. Have a great day, and God bless. As always, peace.